This week I'm trying my hand at private investigating in Pecaminosa.
No, the little one. Oh, don't worry. That's not how my story ended. Neither how it started. Screw this city.
So this week I'm grabbing my Nintendo Switch and I'm checking out a police action RPG called Pecaminosa, a pixel noir story. And this gives me some real Dick Tracy style vibes. I mean, we're kind of a rough and tumbled ex-detective, John Sousa, and we're trying to redeem ourselves now because we've been visited by the last mob boss we killed, Charlie Two Angels, and he's come back to give us a little bit of redemption. He's tasked us with kind of going around town, cleaning up some of the mob bosses that are left over, and we've been given the promise that if we do this, we will be allowed on to heaven when we do decide to pass on. This is a very kind of interesting, dark, kind of weird story right from the get-go, but it does kind of follow that classic, 40s, 50s private investigator style thing, which was, kind of what drew me right in. I mean, I really enjoyed the art style here. The pixel art was beautiful. There are some light RPG elements that I did also enjoy, but this game definitely had some issues. But honestly, I'm going to get into the story first before anything else. We are ex-detective John Sousa. Like I said, we've been visited by Charlie Two Angels. We've been tasked to go around town, Pecaminosa, which is this dark kind of rough town. Then we're cleaning it up a little bit, and this is our kind of last kick at the can, last chance. And we do collect things along the way, whether it be items, different weapons, things like that. So first getting into this game, I was drawn in by the story and the art style and the music immediately. It was all really, really well done. I thought, this just had that look, that vibe. But unfortunately, I started playing in handheld mode, and because this game does kind of have this dark undertone to it, everything is pretty dark in this game, especially in the city environment. So I actually ended up putting it on the TV because I just couldn't get it bright enough on the Switch handheld. So early on in this one, we get introduced to the controls of the game. It plays very much like a 90s twin stick shooter. The left stick to move around, the right stick to aim, and then we're going to use the right bumper to whether, it's attack, essentially. It's going to be shoot the gun or use your melee. And honestly, this feels so clunky. I mean, it keeps true to the nostalgia of how these games used to play, but honestly, I found myself trying to use the D-pad just because of the way the movement works in this game. I kind of thought the D-pad would work a little nicer than the stick, but the D-pad's actually assigned kind of as a quick inventory selection or quick weapon swap. So I found myself dropping items or using them when I didn't want to sometimes because I was just trying to use that D-pad all the time. But you do have to get used to using that twin stick, and it just felt a little clunky. I mean, after playing about 3.5 hours of this game, you kind of get through it and all the combat feels the same way, and it doesn't really satisfy you at all. You just kind of get in there, you jam the attack button, and you either block it with left bumper, attack with right bumper, and that's it. And you either die or you don't. I found that ammo is very scarce in this game. You shouldn't use it like crazy because you can't always pick it up. You do pick up quite a few healing items, which is nice, and you can pause and use those healing items as well, so you're not having to jump through the menus at quick time in the middle of a battle. But honestly, like I said, there's just something about this combat that just doesn't feel that satisfying overall. And it's just the controls that really get to you. They just don't feel that smooth. I know that's the style of the game, but it didn't work for me. Like I said at the beginning of this review, there are some light RPG elements to this game. There's a life system that we use that as you upgrade and level up, you get experience points to put into this system. It's luck, intelligence, force, and endurance. And these 4 categories will give you kind of buffs as you go through the game. I didn't find them to be overly effective. I mean, some of them, like intelligence, will allow you to change some of your dialogue options, but again, the dialogue was really slow, and honestly, the whole pace of this game was a lot slower than I wanted it to be, especially in the movement department. When you move around in this game, you are at a snail's pace. I mean, you can upgrade in your endurance because that is supposed to increase your player's speed, but it doesn't do that. I mean, you're just so slow. You can't run, you can't can't jog. There is a dash button that uses your endurance, but you can only really use that a couple times in a row, and it does slow you down right after you use it anyways. So it's a little difficult. Then the pacing of this game is really where I got hung up the most. And the last part of this game that I want to touch on is actually my personal highlight, which was the boss battles. I thought they were done really, really well. I mean, it kind of takes me back to those 90s games where, once you learn the pattern of the boss, you've got them figured out, but it takes a few tries and, a little bit of frustration to get to that point, and they did a good job here. I'll say the boss battles tend to ramp up the difficulty significantly higher than compared to any other battle throughout the games, so that was kind of a little inconsistent, but overall they were done well. I thought the characters were pretty funny. They did a good job with the art style and kind of the music, so they really got involved with those boss battles. But outside of the battles, this game is really hit and miss personally. And overall, I had an okay time, and I think a lot of people will be split down the middle with this one just because of the way it's laid out. The pacing of the game is really slow. It does have a somewhat interesting story with kind of interesting characters, but if you don't get hooked by that, it's going to be really hard to stick around with this one. And for a sub $20 game, you could definitely spend your money better in other places. I can only give this one a 5 out of 10. Great pixel art and a well-done soundtrack are the only good things about this one. The questionable dialogue and clunky controls will have you putting this one down sooner than later.
A town that smelled of death, sex, and gunpowder. That was Pecaminosa.